Hello there and welcome to another edition of Rebels Unveiled. This time we got Series 6 Heat. I hope you enjoy.
The outcome of the battle between Wildfing and 259 was the only decision that Philippa Forrester was notably upset at, leading to the only time whereby she questioned the judges over their decision to award the battle to Wildfing. During the second melee, Jonathan Pierce said that Wildfing made it to the semi-final of its heat in Series 5, when it actually progressed to the overall semi-finals in that series. This contradicted a quote spoken before the battle that Wildfing had made it to the semi-finals in previous occasions. During a post-battle interview following the conclusion of the Wildfing vs 259 fight, a backstage announcer can be heard introducing Agrobot 3 into the arena. This suggests that both round 2 battles were actually filmed in the opposite order on how they aired. This heat contained 3 judges' decisions, all of which involved Wildfing. The only 2 matches not to go to the judges contained Agrobot 3. Infernal Contraption and Infinity would meet each other again in the Extreme 2 University Challenge, once again with Sergeant Bash and Sir Killalot as the house robots. This heat was the only time in 3 series that Vader progressed beyond the first round. For unknown reasons, this episode and Heat F were used in the Extreme 1 Series 5 style title sequence rather than the updated sequence introduced for this year. During his guest interview with Jonathan Pierce prior to the Heat final, Craig Charles briefly stated that Wildfing was equipped with a flipper and a spinning disc, despite the Series 6 version only being designed with the latter weapon. Infernal Contraption fought in Series 5 qualifiers under the name Gara, where it fought and badly dented an unidentified snake robot. Speaking of Series 5 qualifiers, Vader fought and lost to Dome, footage of which is available online. Agrobot, despite appearing in Extreme 1, fought a robot called Full Metal Bucket, winning that fight but losing against Reactor and Barbarous afterwards. The Stag fought Megahertz and Mute, winning those fights but drew against Lamsey. As for the Sixth Wars qualifiers, the Stag fought Scrap Dragon, Gyrobot and Shellshock, winning the qualifier. Infinity arrived unfinished at the qualifiers but surprisingly managed to get fixed in time, where it fought and won against 3 unknown opponents. Agrobot fought Hydra, Mad Dog and a 3rd unknown opponent. However, this battle's results are unknown. 259 fought Chip, Colossus and Splinter in its qualifier, managing to immobilize all 3 in 30 seconds flat. Infernal Contraption fought Double Trouble, GBH2 and Ripper, where Ripper withdrew due to technical difficulties, resulting in only 3 fighting, and all were surviving. The qualifier was supposedly very impressive, and all 3 performed so well that all 3 were granted qualification. Vader was originally going to enter Series 6 under the name The Emperor, another Star Wars reference. According to an interview in the Rebels Club newsletter, Nick Adams considered arming Wildfing 2 with a horizontal disc, but decided to make it vertical because he felt that there were already enough of horizontal discs on the show. Despite being Adam Clark's 5th entry for Rebels, including his 2 robots which did not get selected or successfully qualify, 259 was the first one to actually win a battle. 259 was based on the US robot Cyclone, and the robot itself designed on Adam Clark's previously failed qualified robot Bone. Vader's loss to Wildfing in Series 6 was the only time that it and the team didn't lose by being KO'd or getting flipped out of the arena. The Stag was the only robot from this heat to not win a battle. Infernal Contraption is technically an offshoot of the Stinger team with Jonathan Pillay, as well as Gary Ewer, who attempted to qualify for Series 4 with the Necromancer. And that is it for today. Series 6 Heat E is a very infamous heat, mainly because of 259. A lot of people love 259. It's such a deadly looking robot, very destructive. That opening melee with 259 just shredding the back of Infernal Contraption and taking apart its opponents is brutal, absolutely brutal, which is kind of funny because you really think about it. Infernal Contraption survived that fight. It pitted itself in the end, but it survived that fight against basically having its backing torn to pieces. I'm actually amazed that Infernal Contraption survived such amount damage, but obviously this whole heat is more remembered for 259. It is the big robot of this heat. However, it did lose in the second round, which makes me wonder why the producers didn't have 259 fight another robot in the second round, so that we could have had a 259 Wildfing heat final, which could have been more interesting than the heat final we got, because overall this episode is not the most entertaining, not the most memorable, sadly. A lot of battles felt kind of meh. 259's opening melee is fantastic, as is the battle between Wildfing and 259, the big comeback from Wildfing, disc of 259 basically losing its belt. It's a really good battle overall. I can understand why Wildfing won, and I know that it's a very controversial battle, but I can see why Wildfing won, because 259, despite it being this big, powerful robot, it was a glass cannon. You know, it's the type of robot that would just break apart just because. And we see this definitely in in the UK versus Germany special, in which, you know, it could win maybe a fight, but then it wouldn't win another fight. So yeah, overall, I think, you know, 259 is a great robot. Wild Thing is the other big star of this particular episode. Wild Thing, its design is completely different. This is the Wild Thing that a lot of people really hate, mainly because Wild Thing previously was really good. And Series 4 version in particular being an absolute beast, keeping up with Hypnodisc and very closely almost defeated Hypnodisc. In fact, I believe it's Hypnodisc's toughest battle, as they said in the Ultimate Warrior DVD. But here, Wild Thing felt very underpowered. You know, its disc would stop as soon as it hit another robot. It'd get stuck. It wouldn't be necessarily chipping away or taking damage or anything like that. Especially when you consider the fact that it had a really powerful flywheel in the previous series, which was able to cut into dominated wheels. So, you know, I do think, I'll be honest, I think going for the disc route probably wasn't the best idea for Wild Thing. I think if it continued to use the lifter or flipper route, it probably would have done much better. In my opinion, at least, the wedge with the lifter would have worked far better than adding a disc, which clearly never really worked in the first place. So yeah, I can see why this Wild Thing is not very popular, especially when the fights are really boring. And the most memorable fight is the one where it gets chucked about the arena. So yeah, Heaty overall, it's a decent Heat on some aspects, but on other aspects it's a very weak Heat. So as per usual, we're going to use the randomizer to see what comes next. So we're back with Series 1 next, and Heat B is my favourite of the Series 1 episodes, so that'll be very fun to rewatch and gather some facts for. I hope to see you next time.